listening to the Metal Command Podcast.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you. And today's guest is Ken Mary. Yes, Ken is coming back on the show. He was on the show earlier in the year to promote the latest Fifth Angel album. And Ken has come on to talk about the upcoming album by Flotsam and Jetsam, I Am the Weapon, which is the third album he has now played on with this band. Ken has also played in a variety of other great bands. Perhaps you have heard of a few of them: Impellitteri, Alice Cooper, House of Lords, Fifth Angel, and of course, Flotsam and Jetsam. Before I get into the interview, though, if you want to support the show, please like the video, share the video, leave a comment on the video as to what you think of Ken's comments talking about the album and music in general. And, of course, any other social media outlet where you see or hear this podcast, please give me a follow there. With that being said, here is the interview with myself and Ken Mary. Welcome back to the Metal Command Show, everybody. Ken Mary back again to talk about a different band he is in. And we are talking about the upcoming Flotsam and Jetsam album, which I think is outstanding. And talk about the record. And, I know it's coming out, I believe, in the fall. And
it's actually pretty soon, September 13th, which,
yeah. So
by
September
the way,
13th.
Kids, that's Friday the 13th. So get your hockey mask on.
Don't jinx it. Anyhow, I think the record's excellent. And what are your thoughts on it? For you, tell people what you think about this album, and comparing it to, say, the last two records that had come out.
Well, it's really interesting. We've had a lot of feedback from a lot of different people. Sometimes, if we're going to be completely honest here, it's sometimes difficult as the artist to really know how you did, on any record. And, once we did the End of Chaos and then we had to do Blood in the Water, we're like, we hope we can achieve what we started on the last record and take it a little further. And then that was the kind of the thought process here. We were thinking, well, Blood in the Water is a great album. Let's see if we can, even move the ball further. And, so as an artist, you're always trying to get better and better and better and release a better record every single time. And we definitely tried our best to do that. We wrote many extra songs. We whittled it down to just the songs that we felt were really great songs. And, it appears, from what we've heard from everybody that everybody's super happy. Like, some people at the label told us this is the best Flotsam album ever. We've had other people say it's their favorite Flotsam album, and for me, like, when somebody says that's very powerful, because I think we talked a bit about this on the show before. It's hard to fight against nostalgia, and people that loved the first two Flotsam albums, for instance, they were in a specific time period and they loved that music for that time period and everything, and then all of a sudden you have something new and it may not have the same impact. So when somebody says, hey, we love this new album, the best of any Flotsam, I'm kind of like, wow, because that means that we're overcoming even the power of nostalgia at this point. So,
yeah,
it's great to hear that. And so far the response has been just, amazing. I mean, people are saying, best ever. We have one guy that works very closely with us, and he said A New Kind of Hero was his favorite Flotsam song ever on any record. And we're just like, wow. I mean,
yeah.
What can you say? I mean, we're super happy to hear that. So maybe we achieved our goal of even, besting the last album. I don't know. We'll find out.
A New Kind of Hero, in my opinion, is the best of the singles that you've put out. Like most people, most labels, it's usually 3 to 4 songs to hype the record up, over the course of a few months while they're waiting to get everything, all the merchandise made, t-shirts, vinyl, all that stuff. But I think that song is probably, of the 4 singles that you put out, that one is my favorite of those 4.
Well, that's funny that the gentleman I was just talking about, that works really closely with us, that was his complete favorite too. So, I guess that's great. I mean, I'm super happy to hear that, a song that we've composed and assembled is is really hitting people, hitting a nerve for people. I think that's all you can hope for as an artist.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I think what you also did with this record, and this might not be something people may have said to you, but it's something I noticed, is that the 4 songs that you put out are a really good representation of the record. And what I mean by that is, you have a song that, like, A New Kind of Hero, or you got a song like Primal, or some of these other songs that are a lot different from each other, and it really gives a good representation of the album. Where I've noticed a lot of bands, and I see this a lot, I'll hear a promo of an album, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at the singles they're putting out, and I'm like, man, they would just put this song out, that song out. It would give people a good idea, but not everybody does that. You guys, I think, did a great job of that.
Well, we tried. I mean, what we did honestly is just try to pick the songs that we felt the strongest about. I mean, the label was actually very important in this process. They were very much in the mix as far as picking, what singles were going to be released. And, obviously they're going to seek our input as well, but they were like, hey, we'd like to release I Am the Weapon first. Are you guys okay with that? We'd like to release, trying to remember what was next.
I think it was Burn My Bridges, wasn't it? I don't remember now.
No, Burn My Bridges, I think, was third. I think
Primal was second.
I think Primal was second. Yeah, Primal, which is, that's one of my favorites. So, they had a big, they had a lot of input into as far as, what was going to get released. And I don't think they intentionally tried to show the variation in the songs, but I think they ended up doing that. I agree with you. I think it's really nice that the songs are a little bit different because, you get a little bit of a sense. I mean, they all flow together, somehow. I mean, they all fit together, but they are all different. And I think that that's something to kind of expect in the record too, that not every, it's not like some bands where every song sounds, like almost like a remix of the same song. We definitely don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. The last time you came on my show, we talked about, kind of how these 2 records, I talked about how the last 2 albums were my favorite albums that, the band had ever done. You agreed with me, not just because you're in the band, but I think musically, when I look back at the history of this band, I think that they are the strongest. And I think this album is right up there with them. And it's interesting you brought up the nostalgia thing, because in the 26 years I've been doing this, obviously Flotsam and Jetsam has been coming out with, albums every 3 or 4 years, over the course of that time period. And, The Cold probably got the best press, or got the most, most people really liked that album a lot. But the last 3 albums, from just comments on social media, from other people that do what I do, from everybody, I have never seen this much positive feedback, about these last 3 records, as if, about any of this band's albums. And, a lot of people still go back to the first 2 records. I mean, that's always a very common thing, but I'm going to be honest. I have very rarely seen something like this, where, these people are like really clamoring for these records, and to me, they stick out in a very good way compared to anything this band has done. I will be honest. I will take everything from these last 3 albums over anything the band has done, even over the first 2 records. I mean, that's just me. But I think that I've seen a lot of people who basically agree with me and are even more enthusiastic about it than I am. I mean, I don't, I normally don't get, I'm not like one of those nostalgia people. And as well as I do, that people will go, that people will basically, they stick to a certain record, and I think like nothing is going to be better than that. Right. And
sure.
you guys have really overcame that. And what has that feedback been for you? Like, you joined the band, a couple albums ago now, I guess. I mean, it's been a while, but when you first joined the band, the first album you recorded with them, what was the feedback like it is now? I mean, because I was blown away by that record. I think everybody was like not expecting that.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I think there's something really special going on with the chemistry that's in the band, currently. Like everybody has a very heavy hand in the writing. And I think, like most bands, when you have different personnel, it's just going to be a different animal. And I think with this particular group of guys, like I've been in bands where it's very difficult to write and it takes a long time and it's a stressful process, and it's a lot of hard work. And with this group of guys, stuff comes out rapid fire. I mean, and they're usually great ideas. And like even the songs that we didn't put on this record are great songs. Like some of them are amazing, and we just didn't have time to finish them. We didn't need them because we hadn't enough songs. And, we probably have half of the next record written, and it's great. In my opinion, they're great songs. So it's a very prolific band in terms of the writers. Everybody's a writer, everybody has a lot of experience. Everybody's done a lot of records. And I think that really sort of helps when when you have a team like that works together as well as we do. I agree with you, like in terms of, my favorite Flotsam albums, and again, it's hard to say because I'm in the band, but I'm also a fan of the band too. And I agree.
Yeah.
Like I love those first two records. I think are amazing. And they definitely were, for their time period, pretty stellar. I mean, like some of the instrumentation and some of the playing, on that record and singing, for that time period is really exceptional, especially when you consider how little the band had to spend on making a good album. They did not have much money to spend on those records.
No.
And production wise, they didn't really get the hand in production like a producer that really took the time to make things the way they really need to be. And I think that regardless of any of that, they came up with some incredible music and some incredible energy on those records. And I think that's what people relate to and they attach to. And I think on these last three, I think, we do have the experience. We do have the, a lot of studio experience. And I think we're able to bring the ideas to the table and make them sound like we would like them to sound, which is an advantage. When you have guys in a band that are seasoned, that have done a lot of records, that really helps. You end up getting an album that you like, and I think that's been the key for Flotsam on these last really 4 records. I've been with them for the last 3, but even the one before it, which was self-titled, the self-titled album, I think that was kind of the beginning of this sort of renaissance of Flotsam and this sort of new direction and just super aggressive. And there's just like on this album, there's different tones and there's different sounds and certain songs have different approaches, but I think that there is all a consistency to it as well. There's like a sound that the band has kind of captured, and I think that it's a very natural thing. It doesn't have to be forced. We don't have to coerce the songs out of ourselves or anything like that. It's just something that comes really naturally. And so far, we just tried to make music that we love, and we figure, well, if we love these songs, then hopefully we're right, and hopefully a bunch of other people will too. And I'll just make one quick point because I don't want to dominate the conversation here, but for me, I usually get bored listening to albums that I've played on and helped produce and helped write, and like by the time it's at the end of the day, and I have, I don't ever want to hear the songs ever again. And these Flotsam albums, even though The End of Chaos and Blood in the Water and I Am the Weapon, I can still listen to these in my car and really enjoy and love and separate and just listen as a fan, which is really unusual for me. I normally just pick stuff apart, because I'm a producer as well. So I'm going to be, I'm just, listening, going like, oh, I wish we would have done this, or I wish we did that, or I wish this solo was louder, or I wish I could hear the kick drum more. Like I'm always making some sort of evaluation of the music when I'm listening. And I can listen to these albums and actually enjoy them like a fan, which for me is a very unusual thing.
Because of all the positive press for the two albums before this. Did you feel any pressure making this third one? Or was it just such a natural thing for you that you didn't even have to think about that?
Well, we definitely thought about it. I mean, we definitely wanted to make a record at least, equal to Blood in the Water. That was the goal. We're like, hey, let's not go backwards. Let's try to make an album. Let's do everything we can to make a record that's at least that good. And again, I'm going to be 100% honest in this interview. We weren't totally sure we did that. At the end of the process. I mean, we thought we did. We went, wow, I think these songs are going to actually be really cool. But until people hear them and you start getting feedback, you kind of don't know. Like you feel like, yeah, this is working. These are great songs. It's great energy. We love them. But just because we love them doesn't mean that everybody else is going to love them too. So,
yeah,
you just hope for the best. But yes, there was definitely pressure. I mean, we definitely felt the pressure. But I think we kind of ignored the pressure too. We just said, well, let's just do what we always do. Let's just make songs that we are really moving to us and we feel excited about. And then hopefully everybody agrees with us.
One of the things I've noticed about the songwriting itself. So you're involved in the writing. And one of the things that when I've ever reviewed these records or I've talked about them is, Flotsam and Jetsam does have their own kind of sound, but it's like you added in a little more melody and a little more of almost like an American power metal vibe within the thrash metal. I know that sounds crazy, but some people might look at me like, why am I saying that? But that's what I think changed. Because when I listen to, let's talk about the first two records or even any of the other albums, they either were like straight ahead, like thrash basically, or they would be like an album like Drift, where it was just a lot of melodic stuff, but it really wasn't their old sound. And it feels like on these albums, you basically have that thrash element. They're a lot heavier than anything the band has done, but you have a little bit of that melody thrown in there that you typically wouldn't hear. And I think that is what makes these records stand out.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I mean, that's kind of intentional. I mean, I think we wanted to be, the thing is about, songs. I mean, even, even bands that are sort of, I would say avant-garde or more artistic in their deliveries, the songs that always are huge from them are the songs that people can sing along to. And especially, in Europe where we're playing a lot of these festivals like, Wacken or Dynamo or, any of these major festivals, we just think it's an advantage if people can actually sing along with the songs. And so for us, we're trying to write, songs that, like you said, they're aggressive, they're heavy, they're powerful. But at the end of the day, you could sing along with them. And I think that is something that's changed a little bit. And I think that's changed a little bit on these last four records, compared to some of the earlier albums. I guess what I'm saying is I 100% agree with your assessment. I think it's a very accurate assessment.
Yeah, and not only that, Eric has a pretty melodic voice, and in the past, the band, if they've done more straight ahead, more like thrash stuff, like the early stuff, they didn't use that as much. I always used to think to myself, they did not use that as much as they should have. And then when you get an album like, like Drift, I like to bring that one up because that one comes to mind, or the album like The Cold, they used a lot of more of the melodic aspect of his voice. And it's almost, like I said, it's like they took that and added it to much heavier music than the band had ever done. And I think what ended up happening was the songs aren't crazy, like as far as being overcomplicated, as far as like the song structures themselves go. They're easy to follow. They're melodic, but the great thing is it doesn't sound like anything the band has ever done before. And so now you have this streak of records that it has come out that it's like, man, these guys, in my opinion, you put out the best music of your career and it's like 40 years in at this point. I mean, think about it. It's crazy, but it's how many people, like there are people that have said that. Like I went and looked at some reviews on some of these records at the end of Chaos, and all of them. And people, that was a common quote. And you don't really hear reviewers say anything like that. They'll say, because here's what you normally hear. People would say something like, best album since Doomsday for the Deceiver. Like they'll always throw that other album in there in the reviews. But with these, I don't see a lot of people doing that. And that's what I think is interesting.
It's very exciting to us. I mean, that just means that, we did our job and hopefully, I mean, all we really try to do is make some art, that is great art. That's what we always, say between ourselves, hey, let's make some great art.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make something that hopefully stands the test of time. Let's make some great music and have something that will always be there. And we did our best to do that. I mean, like I said, I feel like it was such a natural process that, we're super excited that people have responded so positively. I mean, there's nothing better. I mean, as an artist, you certainly want your art to be appreciated. And it does appear that, that is the case with these records. So, we're extremely happy to hear things like that. And, and we will continue to, try and bring it, the best that we can. I mean, that's our goal. When we started this record, it was like, hey, we have to make another, great album here. We cannot just do another, we can't step backwards. We can't do an average record. So for people to go, like, wow, best ever, or some of the comments that we've been hearing, it's just really, it gives us energy, it gives us the motivation to continue and just always bring the fire. I mean, that's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And you approached it, in my opinion, the right way. One of the things I always hate when people say this to me is, I have writer's block, right? My philosophy has always been, you know what? Just write a bunch of tracks, see what they turn out like. Just don't overthink it. I think a lot of bands, and I've been in this situation where you overthink this. You start thinking about, is everyone going to like this? Is everybody going to like this? Is everybody going to like that? Instead, it almost sounds like you guys just went in, wrote a bunch of songs, picked out the best, the songs that fit together the best, and that's how you were able to make a record. And in the process, you get part of the next record done. That's how I've always think bands should do it. But sometimes it doesn't really always turn out like that. But I think that's probably part of the reason this album turned out so well. That's just me.
I think so too. I mean, part of that, what you just talked about, people don't realize too, like, okay, yeah, we had a bunch of songs and we started recording, but we still didn't stop writing. We kept writing the whole time we were recording. And so, what happened, we actually had some songs that we feel would top some songs on this record and be better, but we just ran out of time. And so for us, once we start that writing process, we continue writing, almost until, we're turning the album in. I mean, almost that long. We just keep writing songs. And if something comes along that just kicks butt over something else, we normally will knock out a song. And in this case, we really didn't have that time because we were happy with, I think we have, let me look, how many songs on the record? I think there's 12, 7, 8, 9, 11. So is there 11? Hold on. 4, 5. I have the album right here, by the way.
Oh, sweet. There is 11, 11 barring any bonus tracks you might have put on the digital.
Yeah, so there's 11 tracks, and so we knew we were okay. And but we had some songs that we go, man, once we finish these other songs are gonna crush, So we kept the writing process going, and I think the reason we do that is because we are interested in making a great album, and I think that's the cool thing, and I think we've talked about on your show before, as a producer, I've worked with some bands, and as a producer, I'm always telling them, don't try to follow a trend, write what comes naturally to you, and write songs that you're excited about. And there have been times where I've been in the studio and the band says, well, we love this song, we're going to do this one. We really don't like that one. And I'm like, whoa, time out. Like, if you don't like a song on your own record, you should never put a song on a record that you don't like. I mean, because if you don't like it, why should anybody else like it? Nobody, nobody should like it if you don't like it. So
Yeah.
so we always try to make sure that we are happy as a band, that we are listening to the songs going, okay, this moves me. This is kicking some butt, this is working. And so that's really kind of been the key. And I think also just the experience of everybody, the experience of, having written on so many records and produced so many records and been in different situations. And I think the experience certainly, seems to be helping us too. So yeah, that is funny that you've heard that too. Like, hey, 40 years into the career, they're writing like the best albums ever. What's up with that? And I think that's really the explanation, just the chemistry between the current personnel and then the experience that everybody has, I think, is really helping to make for some hopefully, what people consider great albums.
Yeah, and not only that, but if you put an album or a song on an album that you don't like, and then everybody likes it, you're stuck playing it. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's what's funny is sometimes you'll hear artists that are extremely successful and extremely famous, and they're like, yeah, we hate playing the song, and I'm always like, no, you don't, because that song is the reason that you're able to go on stage and play. I always get irritated when bands say that, like, we don't want to play this, we don't want to play our hits or whatever. And I'm like, no, you better appreciate those hits, because that's what actually allows you to do what you're doing right now, and you do have to give the audience what they want. If they want to hear the hits, play the hits, you know?
Speaking of 40 years in a career, you've been doing this a long time, right?
Yes, I have, yes.
This music, especially what you're playing on these albums, is not easy to play. So I got to ask you, man, how do you keep yourself in shape to do this? I mean, in all seriousness, because, we probably live in the most out of shape country in the world, right? And you are able to still play this music at a high level. Not a lot of guys can. There's a lot of guys out there, and I'm speaking mainly of like singers and drummers, because I think when you go on tour and play live, those are the positions that are really difficult to pull off. I mean, I remember a great example. I remember Halloween when they started doing their thing with Michael Kiske, and they had two singers in the band. They were playing like these 3-hour sets, and I'm watching all these guys take breaks, and I'm looking at the drummer like, this dude don't even get a break, and so how do he keeps himself in pretty good shape, obviously, but how do you keep yourself in shape, man? I mean, like, what do you do to be able to still perform at the level that you're performing at?
Well, I'm going to tell you, but other people that might have to do this are not going to like it. I'll tell you right off the bat.
Yeah.
They're not going to be happy to hear this, but here's the truth, and this is the reality. I stay away from sugar as much as possible. Sugar is just, for me, like for my body, it causes inflammation. Like I can tell in my hands, like my hands will start hurting. And they try to sneak sugar in basically everything now. So you have to really be kind of diligent. So I try to avoid sugar. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink anything with caffeine, like Diet Cokes or any type of soft drink. I don't drink any of that stuff. I don't drink any alcohol. Occasionally, if I'm not touring or having to play, I might have some wine with dinner. But that's really about it. So if I'm touring, no sugar, no caffeine, no alcohol.
And alcohol's full of sugar.
Yeah, tons of sugar in it. Yeah, absolutely. And it's difficult for your body to process it. But I did notice for my body specifically, like if I drink coffee and then the next day, like it's a diuretic. It'll actually cause you to be dehydrated. And like the next day, like playing after I've had something like coffee, like I can feel it in my muscles and everything. Like I can tell that I'm having to work harder than I would normally have to work. So those are just the 3 simple rules. I mean, for me, as you get older, it's like you have to be a little militant with this kind of thing if you want to still be able to do what you're able to do at that level that you talked about. You want to be able to do that at a high level. You have to decide for yourself. And for me, it's an easy decision. I like playing drums more than I like eating sugar and drinking caffeine and drinking alcohol. I mean, I like playing drums more than those things. So it's an easy process. But for some people, I talk to other people, they're like, oh, I could never do that. I could never, not drink coffee or have my desserts or stop drinking alcohol. There's no way, dude, I couldn't do that. And, and consequently, that's probably why we don't see a lot of, older musicians, maybe continuing. A lot of people aren't able to continue. I think, like you said, singing, drumming, those are the two things. I think you can be a guitar player as long as you don't get arthritis. You don't necessarily have to follow these rules, bass, guitar, keyboard. You could probably get away with this kind of thing, but drumming is so physical and singing is so physical that I think that those two positions definitely require some discipline and some diligence as far as, what you're saying, keeping yourself in shape.
Yeah. And I don't know if you follow some of my posts, but the things that I stay away from, anything that's a refined sugar, anything that's a refined flour, anything cooked in seed oils, because if you want to talk about something that'll really cause inflammation, that's one of the biggest things. And anything with synthetic B12 in it. And that's literally, and it's funny because I was a track athlete in college and those are the things I was told to stay away from.
Wow. That's great.
And that was a long time. By the way, that's like 25 years ago, 24 years ago.
What has synthetic B12? What is that?
Well, basically, there's two different kinds of B12. Like, for example, if you drink a Monster, it has something called cyanocobalamin in it. That is a synthetic B12. Where if you get methylated vitamins, it's methylcobalamin. That's organic. It's not. It is not synthetic B12. So, like, for example, if you drink an energy drink, so there's two different energy drinks that have two different B12s in them. So if you drink a Monster, you get jittery, you feel like crap, and you can feel the next day, you just feel like your body just feels awful. If you go and drink a Bang energy drink, which has the organic B12 in it, even though it's got a lot of caffeine, but say if you drink one of those, you do not feel like that at all. So cyanocobalamin is from the cyanide molecule too. But that's in a lot of vitamins, so methylated vitamins, man, that's the way to go. That's what I do every day, so I'm 46 years old. I can get up at 5 and go to bed at midnight and still feel fine. That's what it is. And just stay away from that stuff. So I was just curious because someone that's been doing what you're doing and what you have been for a long time, I just think that you have to keep yourself in some kind of shape or do something to keep yourself going. So you answered my question.
You do. Especially as you get older, your body doesn't, function the same when you're 20. I could get away with anything. I could get away with going out, getting drunk, playing the next day, just, you can get away with no sleep. You can get away with anything. And as you get older, you just do have to be a little bit more diligent in terms of, how you're going to treat your body. It's like it's the machine that allows you to do these things. And you do have to do your best to try and take care of it.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, and I agree. And the no alcohol thing's also something I've abided by for pretty much ever. So, I get where you're going from, but it makes sense because when you stay away from that stuff, you have an energy level that you normally would never have. If you see people that get, they get run down. It's kind of like when you go to Europe too, right? You guys just played in Europe. You're going to probably be going back there, I believe, soon. It's interesting.
I can go back Saturday. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go to Europe and you eat the same foods here that you do there, and like say you eat a lot. Let's say you decide to eat a lot of bread here, and then you eat a lot of bread there. If you notice, when you're over there, you don't feel like crap after eating it. Here you do. So
yes,
that's the other major difference. So that's cool.
There is something different, I think, in the food, and even I don't know this. Well, I'm trying to think if I've had European wine in the United States because when I'm over there, I don't have any wine at all. But I have talked to guys in the band, and they can drink wine over in Europe and not be hungover because I guess they don't have sulfites and all that garbage.
Yep.
In the drinks, or they can drink beer and not feel horrible. And so you're right. There's something going on in the U.S. as far as things that they're putting into the drink and food, I guess.
It's kind of like where you see people at Vakken with the living in the beer tent, right? And then like it's somehow they don't get sick, and you just watch these dudes like chug beers like it's water. You know, I mean, you've played there before, right? I'm assuming you have it at some point.
We just played there, actually.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, you just played there. So it's crazy when you watch the beer tent and people just, I watched, there was one person I'm really good friends with that was out there, and he legitimately was just in the, between sets and between bands, he'd go in there and he'd plow down. I couldn't even tell you how many beers he had.
Yeah, and those beers are like this big.
I know.
They're huge, you know?
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But he didn't feel like crap the next day. I asked him, "You're not hungover?" He goes, "What's a hangover?" He looked at me like I was speaking, like I was speaking a completely different language he didn't understand. I mean, that's literally. He laughed at me when I said that. He goes, "What's a hangover?" He didn't even know what that even was. So it's pretty funny. I got to ask you something. I have a pretty good memory and stuff. And I saw this post you had put up probably, like to say, I don't know, a couple months ago, maybe 3 months ago.
Okay.
Working on a project with David Ellefson. You allowed to give any kind of details on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just trying to think if I can do that now at this point. Let me give that some thought for just 1 second.
That's okay.
Yeah, let me not say too much about that. We just collaborated on a song, and we did a video and everything to it as well. It'll be coming out. I don't know what the release date is on that, but it's just one song, and it's sort of I think I can say it's a Rush-inspired track that really is a tribute to Neil Peart in a way, and then also has to do with it's a song that has to do with people who have lost loved ones. It's a song about loss and the feelings that we all share. You know, because no one gets out of this lifetime without losing somebody close to them, and that's really what the project is about. And it does have that. You know, I will say there's something kind of cool about it. You know, Dave Ellefson, people know him as a metal player, and but not necessarily a complicated player. You know, he's usually just kind of holding the fort down, so to speak. And on this song, he gets to show some chops and kind of play some more Geddy Lee inspired kind of parts. And I think that's really cool because nobody's seen him do that before.
You know, I told him in an interview we did that him leaving Megadeth from the musical standpoint was probably one of the best things that could have happened to him, because now he can do all this different stuff he would not have been able to really do being involved in that band, because they're always playing shows, and then when they're not playing shows, they're recording, stuff like that. So he's now able to branch out a lot more people, and there's been some really great bands and projects and albums that he's done, and I just think that's cool. Again, like you said, holding the fort down, but in some of these other bands, he's playing a little bit more, showing a little bit more of his ability, and I think that's cool.
I agree. I think it's really cool. I think it's really cool when, as a musician, you're able to kind of share, some of the things that you've learned over the years musically, and that's what I love about the Flotsam albums is, I think I told, we might have talked about it last time, but I feel like it's 5 guys in 5 race cars on a narrow road.
Mm-hmm.
We're going down the road. We're all pushing the pedal to the metal. We're going full blast. Somehow we get to the end of the road and we haven't crashed. And nobody knows really how that works, but I think that that's really cool about Flotsam. We all get to, pretty much play, whatever we want. And we do put in a lot of crap, like there's a lot of tricky musical things going on at every instrument, whether it's bass, drums, guitars, vocals. There's a lot of really, intricate, tricky things going on. And at the same time, it all blends really well together and it all works musically. And that's another thing that we're not really sure how that happens. Like we aren't, we couldn't really tell you how that works out that way. We don't really know, but it is a cool thing.
Out of curiosity, when you play live with these guys, what is your favorite song to play from before you were in the band?
Before I was in the band, probably I Live, You Die. That's got a cool chorus that people can sing along with.
Okay.
I also like No Place for Disgrace. It's got pretty shredding drums that even to this day, that was recorded, I believe, 1986.
Yeah.
And to this day, we're almost 40 years later, and it's still a challenge. It's still because when they were young, I mean, they were. You can hear the exuberance in those tracks. You know what I'm saying? Like they were young, they were excited, they're just pedal to the metal kind of energy. And that's kind of what, in my mind, like that's what I try to capture that now with what we're doing. Like I go back and I told Kelly, the original drummer, I said, dude, you came up with so much like amazing stuff, I go, how did you do that? And he goes, I just, followed the songs, I followed what the music, moved me to do. And I was like, and I said, man, I can hear the youthful exuberance in his playing. You know what I mean? Like he's just excited and he's just going crazy and just stuff is just pouring out I could literally hear that in the music, and that's why I think those albums were successful, because maybe the production wasn't as good as it should have been, but the energy and the emotion and the exuberance was very much there.
Right. You know what is it? You know, it's another thing that I don't hear as much, like something I don't hear said nearly as much ever since the End of Chaos came out. I don't hear the words, the band that Jason Newsted used to be in before he joined Metallica. I don't hear that as much anymore, because you would see reviews where people like, yeah, this is the band that Jason, like the guy was out of the band for like 30 years and people were still bringing that up. I don't see that anymore. It's almost like this band has kind of broke that. What they broke that, what I call, how they have typecasting in Hollywood, right? They kind of broke that. Aside from the nostalgia thing you talked about, it seems like the band has kind of broken that typecast they've ended up getting of themselves as being the former Jason Newsted band who joined Metallica, right? Played on one album. I don't see that as much. I think the music has taken people's minds away from a lot of that stuff. It really has.
I hope so. I hope it does, because, let's face it, Jason, went to one of the biggest bands in the history of music, Metallica, which is phenomenal. And at the same time, if you go back and you listen to the early Flotsam albums and you go and listen to the Metallica albums, I think there was I think they were a little nervous about Flotsam. I do know that, at least from what I understand, and this, I'd have to verify this, but, I don't think he was allowed to speak about Flotsam in any interviews or anything like that. So I think there was a conscious effort there, like, hey, let's not bring attention to this band. And I think because it was faster, it was more aggressive, it was heavier, you know what I'm saying? Like, in terms of, you listen to what Flotsam was doing at the same time and what Metallica was doing, and Flotsam was Flotsam was pretty badass. You know what I mean? Like they were going to be a force. And then I think it was kind of an unfortunate thing they lost Jason, because he was really one of the driving members of the band. He was one of the guys that was very business savvy, making things happen, and making the calls and doing a lot of that kind of work. I think losing him was definitely had a big, in my opinion, a big negative impact on the band. But maybe that, I don't know, maybe that was part of the plan, of Metallica. Who knows? Like, hey, we can cripple this band, that'll leave space for, I don't know. I mean, now I'm just, now it's just conjecture, but I do think that there was some wariness, in terms of, like, Metallica was definitely aware of Flotsam and what those guys were bringing in that era at that time. And I think it was a little, like, go back and listen to what Flotsam was doing. It's pretty intimidating.
They were both on Elektra Records at one point at the same time.
I know.
No Place for Disgrace. Yeah, I mean, it's almost as, you say tragic that they lost Jason. It's almost as tragic as them muting his bass on Injustice for All. I mean, it's like, I still want to hear the original bass. It's like one of the top 5, like, things in metal that nobody's really, it's not out there. His bass on Injustice for All in the mix, just muting it.
Well, actually, from what I understand, I haven't heard it myself, but there's a version out there because now with AI, they're able to separate out the tracks. They're able to, pull the bass out or pull the drums out or pull the guitars out. I mean, which to me is like magic. I don't even know how that's happening. But with AI, you can take a stereo master and you can pull out all the individual pieces. And from what I'm told, we were just talking about this on the last shows that we were doing. One of our crew guys was saying he heard the album, heard Injustice for All with the bass raised, and he likes it way better.
I'm sure.
So it's a way better record, and so he's obviously has that and is listening to that. So I'm pretty sure it's out there that you can actually hear it with bass now. That's got to be really cool for Jason, because he obviously worked very hard to create something in those songs, and then for it to just kind of not be on the record. Yeah, I know. I've seen him in interviews where he said he was really angry about that.
Yeah.
So I can understand that.
Well, 20 years from now, someone can make an album and then they can use AI and say, I want Ken Mary to play in my album. And then miraculously, an AI version of Ken Mary is going to be on the album. They're kind of working towards that, which is crazy.
The music business itself is in a very precarious place with AI right now because AI, there are AI artists on Spotify that aren't real artists that now have billions of plays. And I've talked to some of my friends that have children, and I said, well, are they listening to this stuff? And they said, yeah, absolutely. They don't care whether it's a real person or whether it's a real band or whether it's AI or whatever it is. It's like they just want to, if it's a song they love it and they don't care. And I'm like, wow, that's going to be a very interesting change in dynamic. I don't think it's going to happen maybe in the metal community, but man, that's weird to me. It's like, so you're going to have artists that don't really exist now that are having 1 billion plays on Spotify, and Spotify doesn't have to pay anybody. And I think Spotify is already like the devil. And, now it's like, wow, now they're even replacing the artists entirely so they don't have to pay anything. I'm just like, really? I mean, it might be the end of their business, to be honest with you. Like, I think at some point there might be some sort of, karma's a bummer, in terms of stuff like that. So we'll see what happens to them. But I'm not a huge Spotify fan, which is kind of odd because, we obviously need Spotify, but I'm not going to be one of the people that is going to say, hey, it's great, we love it. I think it's ruined the industry, but I think streaming in general has. But
yeah, I would probably say it does, and I think one of the things that I think is bad with it is it's being relied on so much to like gauge a band's fan base. It's like almost like the sole tool now, besides social media, to gauge a band's fan base, because there's a lot of people that don't use Spotify. I've never used it. In all seriousness, I've never really had any use for it. It just, all the music I have is here, right?
Yeah, sure.
So and then not only that, but I don't want to stream, because if I drive through a place where there's no signal, then obviously it's going to cut out. Kind of like the radio would, back in the day. You go too far away from it. So, yeah, I mean, but it's crazy because they had this universal music thing where you can like, I don't remember exactly how I read the article. Now it escapes me, but they had something where you could put different singers on that label singing different stuff, right? And I've seen weird stuff on YouTube, like, Ronnie James Dio singing like a Michael Jackson song, or stupid stuff like that. And it sounds bizarre. Now, some of it you can pretty much tell it's AI. Some of it's pretty close. I mean, you could tell it's not them, but where's the technology going to go in 10 years, 20 years, 30
Well,
years?
I think everything, AI to me is a huge problem on so many fronts. Artists, I'm talking about like, actual like graphic arts. I think it's already hugely impacted. The music business is already hugely impacted. To me, it's like I want AI to do things like my laundry and fix my car and do all these other kind of things that I don't want to do, and instead AI is taking over all the things that we want to do. Write songs and create art, and I just think it's a huge problem. And like when you talk about how long I've been in the business and the fact that I'm not 20, I'm really glad, because I think the opportunities for young artists, I don't know what's going to happen. I feel really bad for them. I feel like they're going to be in a very odd world where, if you just look at how easily AI can create an album, literally in minutes, and it'll be really good. I have a friend who writes with AI, and he'll spit these songs out in minutes, and give it lyrics and tell him what kind of style and all these different things, and make some changes, and he'll edit things around. And but the bottom line is it can spit out a song in half an hour that would take us a week in a recording studio to do it and make it sound like that. So recording studios are over. Book writing, editing, anything to do with books is over. Anything to do with graphic arts is over. That's what the whole writer's strike was in Hollywood. They don't want AI being used to write television shows, because it can do a great job. It can write an amazing television show in like minutes, and they don't have to pay anything to have that done. So anything creative is being impacted, and I think it's in a very short order. They're predicting 30% of jobs are going to go away because of AI. I predict 60% of jobs are going to go away because of AI. That's my prediction. You heard it here on Tony's show first.
You're a lot more optimistic than I am on that. That's just kind of where I'm at. It's funny because the thing is, AI could be such a great thing. Give you an example. You're a producer. I can have AI clean up the drums a lot quicker than I can do it myself. Right. You can do that. I can, as a photographer, for me, I can have AI color balance something, like when I do like photo restoration. So if I get negatives from like, say, Kodachrome, for those that know photography, and I stick the slides do degrade over time. The colors they're a little bit off, and I can go in there and say, color balance this to reflect Kodachrome, and it'll do that. I'm not saying it can do that now, but eventually it will be able to do that. And, that kind of stuff, it's great. And it's such an unpredictable future. We don't know what this is going to end up doing.
Well,
and kids don't listen to music like you and I did when we grew up.
Absolutely.
I grew up, kids, if I were to go up to them and say to them, yeah, I'm listening, the turntable I'm using is a Bang & Olufsen Balegram 8000, 8005 or whatever, which is a pretty expensive turntable, and I'm using a Macintosh receiver preamp into two Bose 901s. They're gonna look at you like, what are you talking about? They use little earbuds, and that's what they're used to doing.
Well, Tony, it's been awesome speaking with you. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I have another interview, I guess, coming up in like 2 minutes.
You do.
But I just want to say thank you so much for your support. Thank you for listening to the music, because that's all, that's the greatest compliment to us is, somebody loves music and listens to it. There's nothing better than that. So I just want to say thank you so much.
Hey man, you know what? Thank you. I'll let you go. Again, thanks for coming on again, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. Have a great evening.